right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's rock and roll. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, with another episode of the Not So Fucking Ordinary Show. And if you're new to the show, I'm taking the time to interview extraordinary people. And what that means is I'm digging into the minds of people who are killing it in the corporate world, people who are trailblazing as entrepreneurs, doing super well in athletics, fitness, etc., etc. And before I introduce my two special guests here today, I want to do a quick little plug of show sponsor. We got Fit to Give. Fit to Give is the #1 shaker bottle in the world, providing high quality stainless steel shaker bottles. And what's cool about it is that portion of the proceeds are going to 3 different charities. It's a Minneapolis-based company. So if you want to support the cause, that'd be super appreciated. And you can visit them at fittogive.org.
Sweet.
Now, with no further ado, gentlemen, I feel like you guys aren't used to the tables being turned.
The tables are literally turned.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. Well, you know what? I was going to introduce you guys, but I think you guys are going to do an even better job of introducing yourselves than I can. So, Declan, you start, and then we'll go over to Andrew.
Okay.
Who are you? Where are you from? Where were you born? Let's start this bad boy.
Absolutely. So, like you said, my name is Declan Brown. I'm from Denver, Colorado. Oldest of 5 kids, came out to Minnesota.
God, you look like a Colorado boy, too.
Do you think so?
You do.
Is that my vibe?
It's such a... It's just like that laid-back, kind of hippie, mountaineer vibe, you know? I'm loving it, though.
Thanks, dude.
I'm loving it. It's a compliment.
Awesome. You know, that really gasses me up. I'm kind of all in on that, TJ. I'm all in on that. So I'm actually going skiing tomorrow. So that's great. It's very fitting for this podcast. But yeah, from Colorado, came out to Minnesota to play football and become an engineer at University of St. Thomas. Played there for all 4 years during my time there. I met a good friend, Andrew, who also played football there.
Okay.
Andrew, you give him a little background.
Yeah, let's hear it, man.
I'm Andrew Inserra. I'm your wildly average Italian stallion, 5'10", 160 pounds. And I played football at St. Thomas. I was a safety. That's how I met Declan, and that's why I originally came up to the Twin Cities. I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, and my cousin went to school at St. Thomas, and I kind of fell in love with the school when I came in to visit her. And coming to the Twin Cities has been one of the coolest experiences for Declan and I. We went to school there for 4 years, and now 2 years removed. We have this tagline called Dominate the Sandbox, with the Sandbox being the Twin Cities.
Okay.
And we absolutely love diving into the Twin Cities every single day. There are so many awesome, unique personalities here that are up to a great thing. So I applaud you for taglining your podcast, Not Your Ordinary Podcast.
Not so fucking ordinary,
Right.
You, brother.
Amen to that. Because there's so many extraordinary people around us, and you're seeking to have conversations with them. So kudos to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I appreciate you both being on the show today, and I'm excited to dig into the minds of both of you. And what makes this authentic and genuine to me is that I know zero about you guys other than the last 30-second pitches you guys just did. I don't know anything about you guys. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to just digging in and seeing what makes you guys tick. So let's get into this.
Awesome.
I'm trying to figure out who I want to start with. You know, just because we'll kind of go clockwise here. Declan, when someone asks, what do you do? What do you say?
I tell him I do. And Andrew can back me up on this. I do all of the things. I have my schedule is full from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. Like a typical day for me is I get up at 5 and I go work out at our favorite local boutique fitness place at Alter Fitness, if you've ever heard of it.
Okay, sure.
Over in the North Loop. They actually just opened in Edina.
The logo is like ALTR, right?
Yeah.
That's how it's spelled? Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. So work out there in the morning, go to my job as an engineer. So I'm a mechanical engineer working for PCL Construction as a field engineer, building a parking garage at the Terminal 1 MSB Airport. And then in my off hours, I'm spending time podcasting, but at the same time, I'm also a stand-up comedian. So what do I do? I mean, I do a lot of different things. I do a lot of things that, kind of round me out as a person. And I would say, as much as I work throughout the day, I think that that bulk of what I just explained between comedy, podcast, engineering, and working out, that keeps me physically and mentally healthy and just honestly a happy and thankful person.
That's fantastic. We're absolutely going to dig into each one of those buckets a
Of
little
course,
bit more. But
absolutely.
I want to give Andrew an opportunity to, dig into exactly what he does. So when someone asks you, what do you do, Andrew? Let's hear it.
I am continuing trying to figure it out. That's what I do. I am on the process of always evolving. And as a recent graduate, we're in the perfect position to do so. And I am a digital marketer by day and a podcaster by night. And it's one of the coolest spheres to tap into, where I am on the edge of this new technological bubble where you can turn a company from nothing into something very powerful overnight with using the right algorithms and the right trinkets and pulling the right levers. And then I get to have conversations with some of the most interesting and most curious people out there, and I get to sit down with them every night and just have a great conversation. And then I get to try to keep my body, my heart and soul in a healthy position throughout that whole time. And that's the challenge of it all, because you're pushing yourself to limits. You're working really hard, but you also want to make sure that you're treating your body the way it should be treated, and so you can live as long as you want.
I love it. I'm going to stick with you for a second here, because you said something that was already extraordinary to me, and that was, you responded with, "I'm figuring it out." I think it takes a tremendous amount of humbleness to be able to admit that. I think individuals, especially in their 20s, early 30s, they commit to something and they die by that choice, and they fully go in despite whether or not they're passionate about it, whether they love it. They just care about whether or not it pays the bills. And here you are saying, "I'm trying to figure it out. I'm in the progress of it." And I think that's super interesting to me, because again, not only does it take an individual who's humble, but someone who's also super patient, as well as doesn't let external factors, meaning the opinions of third-party people, dictate their life, their decisions, and what they do on a day-to-day. You're not conforming to the mold. And I think that's unbelievable. So with that said, hopefully you're not blushing. How do you have that type of a mindset? How does the opinions of other people, because surely, that is such a major thing. People fall into a path that isn't necessarily for them, and it sounds like, again, you're trying to figure it out, and I think that's super incredible. How do you do that on a day-to-day?
It is one of the hardest things to do. And on the surface level, it looks like I am living a very simple and super beneficial lifestyle. I work from home every single day. I work contract work, digital marketing, and so I have the opportunity to work out of my own house, and I get to set my own schedule, and I have meetings throughout the day that you have to meet with clients and all this stuff, but really I'm not reporting to anyone. It is my day. And at times it feels like I am not capitalizing fully to my potential because I'm not pushing myself in the corporate rat race. I don't have that promotion that I'm seeking, if you will. I'm not building up my 401k. I'm not working my 9-to-5 job and getting all these benefits, these promotions, X, Y, and Z. So to answer your question in short, how I do it is I continue to remind myself, this is what I want to do, this is what I've chosen to do, and if I have chosen to do that, that's for a reason. Remind yourself, why is that? What is that reason? And don't worry that your surroundings and all these external pressures are pushing you to say what you're doing is wrong. And there's no blueprint to it. It's just a consistency of just saying, hey, this is the right spot. You're doing well. You love what you're doing. Who cares that your mom questions what you're doing right now? That she has those questions because she's your mother. You need to continue to do what you want to do, and if you think you're benefiting from this, take that benefit and try to optimize it. And I slip up all the time. I'm not perfect. Like I say 3 times a day, I question what I'm doing, and not in a way that's negative, but in a way that's saying, how can I be better? So it's a continuous process of ebbs and flows, trials and tribulations, of me trying to believe in myself.
And that's one thing too, to tell kind of a little bit of a story. So, Andrew at one point this is back in 2018, so we were finishing up our second season, and Andrew was in a tough spot. more or less because when you graduate college, the expectation is you find a job.
Exactly right.
For Andrew, it was just a little bit different in the sense that it was a struggle to find a job. I mean that's not to Andrew's fault necessarily, but just it's hard to find jobs in general. It's competitive.
And I didn't really know where to look.
Exactly.
I was just like, I was going to job fairs and taking anything that anyone would give me.
Sure.
Right. So Andrew was doing a lot of tasting in the summer and then into the fall. And I was just watching a kid one of my best friends, navigate this time period, but there's no confidence there. Like he just alluded to, like I need to remain confident, and I saw like a void there. So, he had worked in the summer doing a job, and then he got this temp job for the first time where he was actually getting paid like a salary at like United Health Group. And I remember he had told me, what was it? You told me like you wanted to take a step off of, was it podcasting or was it something else?
I was going to take a step back
from looking for a job.
The job that I actually wanted.
Right.
Because I now have enough money to
be stable.
Okay. I wasn't scrambling anymore. And it felt very, very nice to just not have to worry about money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then he tells me that this is the day he got it. And I go, dude, that's bullshit. Like, I know you don't like what you do. I know you don't want to be sitting in a phone center at United Healthcare calling these people every day. Like, I know you don't want to do that. So my advice, and I would advise you not to stop looking. And so I told him that.
I told him to fuck off.
Yeah, I told him to fuck off. I think he went
that.
to bed. I was like, whatever. That's what I felt. And so fast forward to the next day, I'm driving to work. It's a cold winter. We were just talking out here about how we've had a warm winter. It was a cold winter in 2018, early winter as well. And driving to work, and all of a sudden my car just like breaks down out of nowhere. And I'm sitting on the side of the road, waiting for a tow truck to come get me, and an Uber to pick me up. And I'm kind of just sitting there freezing in my car, like not knowing what the hell's going on. And I was like, you know what, screw it, dude. Like I'm here like wasting time at 6 a.m. I might as well text Andrew and all the different people that he could reach into our, like who he could reach out to that's already in our podcast network. That would be great for him to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
So I texted him like 8 or 9 names, and I think for like one of the first couple people he reached out to, and that's how you got like your first job in digital marketing. And that's one of those moments I look back and I'm like, that was really, like Andrew's like a kick-ass freelance marketer now and does all kinds of great stuff, and like he already said, works his own hours and does everything, and I envy that a lot, to be honest. But I remember back to that moment where he didn't have that confidence, he didn't have that belief, and once he got that first job through one of our awesome podcast guests, Giselle Ugardi, she hooked him up with a job, he started loving it, and then that really catapulted into this awakening of like, hey, I can be a digital marketer.
That's great. So working from home, setting your own hours, is there any challenge with that? Because I know that is not easy in itself. I know it sounds glamorous, being able to wake up when you want, go to bed when you want, not have to get dressed, go into the office, sit in traffic, all that fun stuff. But I also know, having worked from home myself, that it takes a certain level of discipline. And do you feel like that comes naturally to you, or did it take time for you to evolve and to adapt to this new format of your day?
It definitely took time, but I had like an amazing foundation playing football at St. Thomas. The defense coordinator, he loves to say, I love to hold my unit to a really, really ridiculously, freakishly high expectation. So what that means is if he's holding that high expectation to us, I should hold that with myself, and I should also hold that with my teammates. So I learned over time what the standard I want to hold myself to, and I'm still learning today. But one of the most beneficial things I have going for me is I wake up at 4:57 at least 3 times a week, and I go work out at Alter with Declan, and we get after it in the morning, and I'm energized more than ever to do that, and I can set the world on fire when I go to Alter in the morning and I do this little HIIT workout with my hot moms and all those awesome people at Alter.
That's great.
And then it really
Tons of hot moms.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it.
And then I can structure my day from there. We have a couple meetings that I know I have to work around, but just like working in things that I want to do, simple things like meditating, reading fiction books, This is like either in the morning or late at night.
Okay.
Just like simple things like that. Because I have the time, why not utilize it for something that can expand me in ways that I'm a kind of a rigid person to begin with. So reading fiction is like an easy way for me to like tap into a little more creativity.
Sure. That's super interesting. Let's rewind a little bit and focus on the 4:57. I know there's got to be some deep meaning behind that. Why 4:57? Why 3 minutes before 5 a.m.?
If I get up before 5, I won. I beat the exhaustion of, fuck, I gotta wake up at 5 o'clock. And setting it at 4:57 is like I'm getting up before that motherfucker. And I have all my, I don't need to wake up earlier than that. Like I can get out the door in a matter of 3 minutes. But if I set that intention and I do not hit snooze, I have already won. And that's like a mental little attribute that you can start your day with.
Fucking love it.
Mhm.
I love it. I knew that this podcast was gonna create some synergies between us. I mean, I'm trying very hard not to speak because when you say something, I just want to go on my own little tangent, talk about why I wake up early, why I go to the gym in the morning, all this stuff. But
Why
I'm
do
gonna
you
do
wake
my
up
best.
early?
Why do I wake up early?
Yeah, no, I'm genuinely
Yeah,
interested.
yeah. So very similar reasons. I mean, there's something about having a very quick win in the day that's super
Yeah.
controllable. And I feel like I'm a big believer that there's, no universal path for individual success, which means just because I wake up early doesn't mean I'm going to be better or outperform or position myself better than anyone else. But for me, it's a mental thing. Probably very similar to Andrew. It's being in a proactive state rather than a reactive. I like to say that I wake my alarm clock up. It's not the other way around. And so that means from first second I wake up, I made the decision to wake up. The alarm didn't wake me up. I'm making the decision to have the breakfast that I'm having. I'm making the decision to go to the gym to work out the way that I want to work out. And by the time I'm done, it's 6:30 in the morning. Most people are still asleep. And for me, it's a natural high that I don't have to shoot up for, I don't have to smoke for, I don't have to drink. It's something that I can create myself based off of my actions. So that's why I wake up early in the morning, go to the gym, do work, do the podcast, go to the gym the second time in the evening for a very similar
You
reason.
work out twice a day?
Every day, Monday through Saturday, and then once on Sunday.
Oh my gosh. So you work out 15 times a week?
Yep.
Goodness me. I work
How
out,
long have you been able to maintain that?
Yeah.
It's been several years.
Several years where
Yeah.
you haven't had 1 week.
Yeah,
where
and you would think I would be like 260-pound bodybuilder, but again,
Dude, you're cut, though. You look
Yeah,
great.
you're pretty cut.
I appreciate it, boys.
Yeah, for the listeners, if you're shamefully listening,
If you're here from
And you're not
back
watching?
pocket audience and
Yeah.
you're coming for the first time, TJ looks damn good.
yeah,
Thanks,
it was,
boys.
yeah,
Thanks.
what is that? A cardigan?
Appreciate it, boys. No, I wouldn't call it a cardio. We got a little bit of a tight gray sweatshirt on with a
good-looking vest.
black vest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's filling it out. That's the whole point. You said like a nice tight sweater. That thing would look baggy as shit on me, and for good reason.
No, it's probably a medium. It's a little medium.
Okay, I like it.
But no, the 2 days again. It's a mental thing for me. Waking up in the morning, getting the juices flowing, knowing that the hardest part of my day is likely that first hour. Again, making the decisions that are super uncomfortable. That's what gets me going. And then I do all the tasks that are required from me from a work perspective and a business perspective. And then somewhere along the day, probably between 4-ish, 5-ish, 6-ish, I feel like my energy is starting to go down. And I want to take a break from business. But instead of allowing myself slip down that slippery slope and taking a nap and stuff like that, I go to the gym, get my body in motion again. And once my body's in motion, my mind is in motion, I walk into the gym with problems, come out with solutions, all that type of thing. And that's when I get my second win, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and then I go back and work until 11-ish or so. But with all that said, I'm still a big believer of sleep. I don't sacrifice sleep, and I had done that for a good 1.5, 2 years, where I was using the power of ego to try and create some machismo, some macho-ness, and I can sleep 4 hours a night and grind, but of course not only is that unhealthy if you're not able to function, but it does affect your effectiveness throughout the day. So with all that said, I do believe in sleep.
Sleep is king.
Yep, it really is.
So do you still get 8 hours and work out twice a day?
I do 6 to 7 hours.
That's
Okay.
what, that's
Yeah,
how
still
6
pretty
to
good.
7. Yep.
I
That's
feel like
so good.
8 is just, it's near unobtainable. It's awesome to strive for it. Don't ever like back away from 8,
Mhm.
but it's almost impossible unless on the weekends.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And 8 is probably my max. So on the flip side, I can perform at least for a little while with very little sleep. But I know that if I do the reverse of that, which is getting 9, 10, I don't think I've ever gotten more than 8.5 hours of sleep in my life. And that's just how that's just how I am.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's not ego or anything like that. I just feel like I'm a light sleeper to begin with, so it is what it is. And then secondly, I have this level of anxiety that forces me to get up. Like I cannot physically stay in bed for that long because again, I'm a light sleeper, so I'm always waking up every 20 minutes or so. I'm just like, okay, I gotta get up, let's bounce. But if I get too much sleep, I feel like I'm not effective throughout the day. I feel really tired.
Mm-hmm.
So let me pause. I'm talking too much. I'm rambling. I said
No,
I didn't want to
we're,
speak. So
we're
We're learning.
extracting good information.
Yeah, yeah,
We're both
Yeah.
podcasters.
Yeah,
We love
exactly.
asking questions.
Yeah, this is a,
Yeah.
this is a unique podcast because you have 2 podcasters talking.
Exactly.
3 podcasters.
3
Yeah.
podcasters. Holy shit! Yeah, 2 different entities that are podcasts.
Right.
But to touch on a little bit of what you said before, like I love the idea that, and this mindset that like when you go and work out, you have all these different like problems and things and that are existing that go into your head,
Mhm.
and then when you work out, you're just like, oh yeah, that's the solution. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it wasn't that hard. It's like, oh, just do this, do that.
Right.
And those are like less than 2 or 3 second thoughts that
Yeah.
are solved that you probably spent. You probably lost a half hour sleep the night before thinking about it and then forgot about it until the next morning, you
Yeah.
know? So I love that mindset, that relief and that release that your body and your mind gets when you are moving.
And I appreciate that. And again, if you wake up, you said that you like to plan out your day. Pretty much every piece of the day is blocked off, or you're being effective throughout the day. If you wake up and you write down your to-dos, and you actually do have a pretty overwhelming list of to-dos, and you're just sitting there in a stagnant position, you're going to feel pretty stressed. You're going to have a high level of anxiety and overwhelm. But for me, I take that same mental checklist of what needs to be executed on for the day, but when I go to the gym and I'm in motion, it just seems so much simpler because I've already got the ball rolling, and it's kind of that, the theory of momentum. It's just, all right, what's next? What's
Right.
next? What's next?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
cool. Since we're talking about the day and being effective, and you said you had a very busy day from corporate job, gym, corporate job, being a comedian, and then of course the podcast. Talk to me about how you stay effective throughout the day. That's a lot of stuff to balance, where most people have their corporate job and at most corporate job and gym. And I should probably throw in the fact that, maybe not in our age group, but maybe, I don't know your guys' audience completely, but I'm sure there are some individuals out there that also have kids, so I don't want to discount the fact that having kids is a full-time job too. So how do you go about juggling so many different things and being good at all of them?
Yeah, it's always like an ongoing battle, but I kind of look at it as opportunity cost. So like I'm genuinely
Interesting.
excited and wanting to be present in each one of those things that I do. So it's really like if you think of it like a video game almost, where you're like level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like each you don't go into level 1 thinking about level 2 already, because quite frankly you don't really know what level 2 has to offer yet. You don't know who that boss is going to be that you have to fight at the end. So like I'm going into my workout just like, okay, let's crush this workout. Then I'm obviously anticipating my day to some degree, but when I get to my day, the construction world and the world that I operate in is a lot of it is firefighting. You're putting out different situations that are kind of coming up within the real time.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've had a good practice of just like enjoying that, going through that, knowing that that is going to be part of my day and not having to give that thought outside of when I'm actually doing it. Then when I get to like the podcast, like to be honest, the podcast is like my thing that I will always be thinking about. So I'm thinking about the podcast and ideas and problems and solving those during my fitness workout, or maybe sending out Instagram DMs and doing different stuff during the day. So like the podcast is pretty consistent throughout that whole time. But again, I'm planning around that. So like right when I show up to the podcast, it's like, okay, now I'm ready to listen. And then for comedy, it's like right after this, I'm going to go do stand-up comedy. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say up there because I've already spent time the day before, maybe at a different night, writing some stuff down. So when I go out after this podcast and I'm in my car, I'm going to just read in my notes and what my comedy notes are and the feedback and the different things I wrote from last night to catch me back up from where I was before. So I think ultimately what I'm saying is I'm segmenting not only my time, but I'm segmenting my mind as well. I'm not missing out on opportunities that are right in front of me because I'm thinking about what's next or what happened just now. I'm trying to stay as present as I possibly can to maximize everything that I actually want to do.
Yeah, I get it. It makes perfect sense. Laser focus on the task at hand, right?
Yeah, correct. And I don't think I've always been that way either. Like I've definitely had, like college was definitely a good time to practice balancing all those things. I felt like I was definitely all over the place. Like playing football and having a girlfriend at the same time made my brain like spaghetti and meatballs, right? But like you learn from those situations, and I think the thing that allowed me to get from, a jumbled brain and not very great performance to, trying to maximize what I'm doing now. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm definitely better than I was at 21 years old. Was just simply self-awareness, like recognizing when you're like, okay, I'm not being present right now, or okay, I'm thinking about a lot of anxiety is building because I'm not thinking about the right, like I'm thinking too much into a pretend situation or something like that. So I've definitely utilized self-awareness to help myself kind of grow through that.
I love it. Here's a question for both of you. You guys feel free to answer first or second. You believe there's a direct reflection or correlation between the more stuff that is put on your plate in a day and your ability to manage it? Like you said, football and girlfriend, your mind was like spaghetti. But here you are juggling multiple balls at once, and you have great control over it, as well as you, Andrew. A lot of stuff going on. You guys feel like as more weight is put on your shoulders, the stronger you get, or the opposite, that it's either luck, random, or
Chance.
Chance. That's the word I'm looking for. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts?
For Back Pocket Podcast in particular, and the Back Pocket brand, pace of play has been our best friend. And I mean that in a way, like Declan and I have full control over what we want of it, and we want to have the most enjoyment out of it, so we can push it in every regards. If we wanted to take it to the moon, like full speed ahead, we could drop everything and go after it. But that's not the thing that we really want to do with it right now. That's not where we find the most value. So we have the ability with just this one entity to hold it with the pace of play. Okay, so if I can control that, and that's kind of like my central hub, then everything around it, I can try to find a way to intertwine.
So when you say central hub, are you saying the podcast, Back Pocket Podcast, is more or less your anchor of happiness, and everything else?
It's the way I want to live is Back Pocket.
Got it.
And I am an ultimate reflection of Back Pocket. So if I want Back Pocket to look the part, I have to look the part. And having that mindset, it helps me kind of figure out how to intertwine everything else, whether it's eating right, getting the right amount of sleep, and then work-life balance. All of that. Ultimately, I look at Back Pocket as my result.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
it's kind of funny to look at it that way, because it's a brand and it's this thing that we just so happen to poof out of the air. But that's what it means to us.
Okay. Right. And correct. We didn't just poof it out of the air. It's been more kind of. We've been trying to figure out what the hell it is for 3 years, and it's
working on 4.
Working on 4, yeah. And I think ultimately it's a reflection, like Andrew said, of who you actually are. You look in that mirror every single day, and you know that's what you have. That's who you are. And we really built that brand with a lot of radical transparency, where we're showing everybody kind of our colors. Like I'm not gonna lie, right now I'm pretty freaking tired, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to have this studio built out, to have you come over, and then totally, unpack a really cool conversation for whatever it is, right? So those kind of things, like Andrew were talking about, is really where, like we see a ton of benefit. So going back, remind me, your question was, what was it specifically?
I don't even remember.
Okay, so you were just talking about the pace of play.
So yeah, and it had to do the
The
question.
listeners like screaming at us right
Yeah,
now. It's
they're
like,
like,
"It
what
was
the hell's
this, you
going on?
idiots."
Yeah. The question had to do with having all the things on our plate.
Oh yeah. Okay,
That's right.
got it. So my answer would be like, it's the dumb like saying that like football coaches always have, but like no pressure, no diamonds. So like Andrew and I are putting in an immense amount of pressure on ourselves to do a lot of great things. In the last year, we did 120 podcasts in 40 weeks. Now, is it fair to say like we would have had a good amount of success if we didn't do 3 podcasts a week for an entire year? Yeah, but at the same time, we got to learn a really, really cool process, and then also the quantity, and you know how podcasts kind of work. Like, it's a really awesome network tool. Like, you make friends through having genuine, undistracted conversations, right? So, like, we did that within the Twin Cities with people that are motivated and like-minded, 120 different people in one area for a whole year. Like, that alone was so powerful for us, and that's like our mantra of dominate the sandbox, right? So now taking that, like, yeah, man, we put a ton of pressure on ourselves. We took a little break between season 3 and now what's coming up to be season 4, and you look back at that and you're like, okay, man, we really put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but we executed. We learned how to, post on social media and keep that chain of 9 Instagram posts in 7 days, and posting on LinkedIn every day, and posting on Twitter every day, and making sure your Snapchat or your Instagram stories are always full. Like, these are things that we physically did that I look back on, I'm like, man, I don't know how necessary all of that was. I don't know what it all meant. And it's not even really worth diving into, to be honest. But look where it got us, right? Like, now we went from dominating the sandbox. Like, yeah, that's always still a goal, always try and get on more people. But now we're able to play in the sandbox. We're able to utilize the connections that we have. If I want to go out tomorrow and do a comedy set and need to get it filmed, I can hit up 6 different people that I know that can film me. I can hit up a couple different people to take pictures, and I have Andrew to record the audio. Like, that's a mini 10-minute special right away if I wanted it. But that's just an opportunity and an idea that I can pursue that I didn't have before. So that's the idea of, like, you can look at it in the present and be overwhelmed by it, or you can choose to look at it in a positive way and reflect and be grateful for it. And I think that's really what we are always trying to institute is, like, look, you can look at your schedule for today specifically and be like, that's a fucking insane schedule. What are you guys doing? Or you can look at all the different things that I got done. They got me one step closer to my potential.
That's a remarkable way to look at it. It really is. And outside of both of your guys' ability to articulate your thoughts in an incredible way, what else have you guys been able to take away from launching Back Pocket Podcast?
And I'm going to take this in a way that of your title of your podcast. So the title is Not So Fucking Ordinary Podcast. Well,
Which I love that, by the way.
Thank you.
Absolutely love that.
Appreciate it.
Well, the tagline of the Back Pocket Podcast is Your Wildly Average Podcast. And it's the total opposite, right? Mm-hmm. We are the ordinary average guys with an extraordinary passion to have a conversation with people that sit across from us, and such as yourself. Mm-hmm. And we look at the ordinary aspect as our biggest asset. We love the ordinary parts of podcasting. We love the mundaneness of sitting down, scheduling out podcast after podcast, chopping up the content, posting it on social, seeing the 500x people that will watch it or like or subscribe or listen, and see that on repeat. Like, we find a lot of fulfillment in the ordinary, mundane things. And ultimately, all that leads to this extraordinary thing that we're doing, that we believe we're doing. And it doesn't matter that if other people look at it and be like, oh, look at these fucking white guys that are recording another podcast and they're at it.
God damn it, here they are.
Here they are again. Like, that's fine. Like, we get it. Like, we're one in a million. But at the same time, Declan and I love to say, no one else is doing it. Because the way that we like to attack it, the way that we embrace the whole thing, no one else is doing it. And it's in a way that we have so much fun and love doing this. And literally, we're working on 4 years now. That's like going into our senior year of like school.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
in one thing, which is actually kind of dope. I didn't think about
Yeah,
that.
that's dope.
Good, yeah, that's sick.
That's great. So while we're on that topic, what's the ultimate goal? You guys see this becoming, some radio station show, or are you guys going to continue to develop your studio, continue to reach out to as many people as possible and have these deep, meaningful conversations with individuals?
Mhm.
Do you try and increase the social presence? Like, what's the ultimate goal?
Yeah, I think you just hit on like all the things that we want to do. Andrew always has like this really good saying of, and he's gonna be pissed that I'm saying this because this is what he
You're gonna
usually
steal
would
a
say.
thunder.
Take
But like how he feels right now and like the things that make him happy, he wants to have that and then some in 5 years, right? Like we don't have a 5-year plan for Back Pocket of like this grandiose thing of it's gonna be this dope brand, blah blah blah. It's like no, I don't necessarily care what that is. I just care that in 5 years that I feel and want to, I have a vision of like how I want to feel and be. Those are simply the things that I want to pursue, and what can I do today to get myself closer to that? Okay, I got that
You
right.
nailed it.
And but that's really what it is. And I think you touched on like building social presence and recording podcasts and having genuine conversation. Those are all fitting under that mold, absolutely. But I think one thing that Andrew and I are now realizing more than ever is that we're no longer just a podcast. We've built a community around ordinary people doing extraordinary things,
Mhm.
right? So that is an endless cycle of people, but also a mindset that we believe that everyone should have to have an awesome, fulfilling life. So it's becoming more of a brand now. Back Pocket's becoming more of a brand. So what does that mean on social? What does that mean on Andrew and Declan in the streets? What does that mean for events? What does that mean for things that we can do to have fun and like basically celebrate or just do different things that could get our brand out there because we care about it deeply, and it's one of it feels like a new thing. Honestly, it feels like a thing that we've I guess been working on and constantly trying to figure out what the hell is Back Pocket, this, that, and the other. But now we're like, okay, it's a brand. Let's do everything we can to fuel this brand, to feed this brand, to grow this brand.
Super fun to listen to, guys. That's awesome. We're not wrapping up here, but I don't want to forget, where can people find you guys individually as well as the podcast, Back Pocket Podcast?
So you can find the Back Pocket Podcast at the Back Pocket Podcast on Instagram. Subscribe to our podcast if you're listening.
If we've earned it.
If we've earned it. If you honestly just click on one of our podcasts. We did a live show last year that we sold out. That was a pretty fun show.
That's cool.
We just released a podcast pretty recently of unpacking our 3-year journey in 1 hour to get you all caught up. But yeah, obviously listen to the podcast first and then subscribe if you've earned it. But yeah, everything pretty much is just at the Back Pocket Podcast. Back Pocket is one word.
All right.
And then I'm Declan Brown. So Declan Brown 44 is typically my handle across everything.
Okay. And Andrew?
Andrew Inserra, Inserra, and my Instagram handle is andrew.inserra. And one thing that just needs to be known, the when you walk into Back Pocket, you'll notice how vague it is, how there's not really a tunnel of industries that we dive into. We dive into the person in front of us, and we dive into the person that we're most curious about. And sometimes we get stuck into a repetitive tunnel of people because it just so happens that the next guest leads to the next guest and leads to the next guest. So when you do walk into our network, we'd love for you to reach out to us and be like, you have not gotten into this industry yet. You have not touched this person yet. You need to go there and you need to touch that curious mindset because we need to be pushed every single day. And sometimes Declan and I get stagnant because it's just us two.
We only have a single perspective of our own, and
Mm-hmm.
we try and grow that perspective every day, putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations or traveling or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But someone else has a totally different perspective that we don't even know, and we obviously are open to hearing that perspective.
Yeah. Such a great way to look at it. You guys are two great dudes. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. You guys are going to be on the up and up for years to come, and I'm excited to
And
watch
you as
it.
well, man.
Appreciate it. I'm going to flip the script, though.
Okay.
You guys said St. Thomas football.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to know is, I want to dive into the mental piece a little bit because I'm sure a lot of your guys' principles and values probably came from the field or your coach in some capacity. So what are some lessons that you have taken away from being an athlete that still hold true today?
The biggest piece from St. Thomas football, and this goes with Declan and I both, we were very, very good football players on our high school football teams. And then we got to college, Division III, where you choose to play. You're not getting scholarship money to play the sport. It's all on your accountability. And we put in our heart and soul into that program. Never took a step back from our work ethic standpoint. And we were on the scout team the majority of our career. I ended up getting on the football field as a backup and special teamer my senior year. And Declan just so happened to be a scout team player all 4 years. And that is why we gravitated towards each other, because we were at the 5 a.m. workouts all 4 years, and we never looked at it like we don't have a chance to play. We never were like, I'm accepting of my scout team role. Lo and behold, when I was a scout team player, I was busting my balls and I was proving that I was the best fucking scout team player out there, and I was going to make those starters work as hard as they can. And I truly believe that mindset led us to a national championship. And we end up losing, but because of that belief in our roles, we allowed the people above us to excel. Whereas when we graduated from the program, they lost the Declan and Andrews on that scout team. And you could say there might be a handful of them, and there could have been other things going on. But I do firmly believe they lost Declan and Andrew and what we brought to the table, and they haven't been back to the playoffs since. And now they're going Division I because of our dominance during our tenure. And there's things to be said there, that the level of entitlement that the program might have felt because of the continued success. However, there were people, I'm not saying Declan and I were the only ones, but
we were the difference makers for sure.
but we had a knack.
Yeah.
And there was an awesome way of going about it, that when a freshman came onto the team, and we're seniors and we're on the scout team, we brought them in, making sure that they were busting their balls as hard as we were.
Yeah.
And that was fun for us because we're out there having backyard football.
Yeah.
And it was a blast.
Yeah. I think what Andrew's like really touching on too is like the fact that Andrew and I were bought into something that was much bigger than ourselves, and it was a selfless movement. Like I wasn't going out there to play St. Thomas football to, get the sacks and have the crowd go nuts and like get all the hot chicks because I play football and this, that, and the other. Like, no, I played football because I wanted to be a part of a culture and a team that had one single belief, and that was to get better every single day, just even a little bit. And that kind of discipline, that kind of mindset, like hardened our minds over time. Like you talk about mental toughness, and that is a muscle, right? Like you're working that constantly every single day. And those are the times where, football was a time where my mental toughness was challenged more than ever. I'm trying to find ways to challenge my mental toughness now because I want to fill that kind of void. And that's what it comes down to, I think, is just like we care deeply about the culture of St. Thomas and the culture of football, and we wanted to be around it more than we wanted to even play. And it showed, obviously, being a 4-year scout team player. And when you're able to grind like that for that long, I mean, it's not easy for sure, but it's definitely worthy because we've taken those lessons, those hardships, those successes even, and implemented it right into this podcast and this brand.
Top 1 to 3 strengths for each of you.
Oh man.
How about I'll tell you what
Yeah,
Declan's
yeah.
strengths are, and Declan will tell you.
Oh yeah, I like that.
perfect.
That's a great one.
I'll go first. Declan's top 3 strengths in no particular order. Fearlessness. I absolutely love being around Declan because of how willing he is to put himself in new positions and fail, and then ultimately succeed down the line. I absolutely love that.
And you have to have that ingredient if you're going to be a stand-up comedian, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm working on it. I like to think I'm funny from time to time.
Another strength that he has is his ability to look at a situation lightheartedly and not take it with the fully, not let it. I don't know the exact word.
Not let it like overwhelm me.
Overwhelm you. Not look at it too serious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely. That's another aspect of that I gravitate towards Declan, and then also his trust in the people around him. He has an ability just to trust someone immediately, and he will trust you until you break that trust. And that's another reason why this podcast succeeds, because he will trust an individual that we have not touched yet with something pretty powerful, and it ultimately works out sometimes.
That's fantastic. What do you think, Declan? Do you agree with those?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah. So what do you got for Andrew?
For Andrew, I would say his organization. So if you go and take a look at Andrew's room versus you look at my room, my room's a shithole. I only maintain it once a week. It gets from a little bit dirty to extremely dirty by the end of the week. Andrew keeps tight shift, makes his bed every day. Guy's got his house in order, to say the least. But I think that's how his mind works too. I'll come to Andrew with a crazy idea or something that I think would be really cool down the road. Andrew, being the organized person, is going to lay out step 1, 2, and 3. Andrew's second strength would be empathy. And Andrew is awesome. He's the guy who's constantly thinking about other people in his life. Sorry, our roommate just walked by fucking butt-ass naked. You can't not laugh at that.
That's great.
You can't not laugh at that. That was so funny.
That was
Jack
unreal.
Baby.
Hey, we're rolling live,
Look,
man.
we
We're
got
rolling live.
2020 action items real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Number 1, Jack Baby, the influencer. That's our buddy Jack Baby.
Okay.
He is an influencer. But anyways, back to the
That's
point.
hilarious.
Andrew's second strength in no particular order, but Andrew's strength, he has strength of empathy. I mean, he's always thinking about other people, and it's just fun to, as a guy who is always going, and not who maybe should be a little more selfless. From my perspective, it's great to have someone like Andrew who's like, hey, why are we not thinking about sending thank you letters to these people, or why are we not, attacking it from this way because they might be feeling a certain way. It's perfect. I love to have that. And then Andrew's third strength is passion. This guy gets fired up about the craziest things in the world, like Steelers football, Tiger Woods, and freaking gambling. But those are all awesome things. Gambling's fun as shit. You can't not get fun about gambling. But he's passionate about what he loves, right? And one of those things is obviously the podcast.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not going into this thing blind. I'm not going into this thing alone. When you look for someone to start a podcast or start something together, you need to have passion and commitment. I was always coming to Andrew hey, we should start this podcast. We should do this and that. And we're operating through it. And Andrew was the guy who was always saying yes, and and had this inkling of belief and following too, because we're both going into this cloudy, foggy, hazy thing of starting your own little brand, not knowing what the hell's going on, but Andrew still maintained the passion to continue down the road, and now we're starting to see a little bit of the return of why we started this thing.
That's great. You guys both clearly know each other super well, and you guys are one hell of a team.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely. This has been fun, guys. Last thing I'm going to do before I wrap up is I'm going to, again, flip the script, and you guys get an opportunity to ask me a question. I know towards the beginning you guys asked me some questions, but this is kind of the final sign-off. Ask me anything. Doesn't matter what it's about.
Nice. I want to know, I asked you a question off air, and I was thinking about asking that, but I kind of want to ask, I want to go a different direction. What does vulnerability mean to you?
Wow, I did not expect that one at all.
Yeah.
What does vulnerability...
Do you feel like you are practicing vulnerability as a question, as a premise to that question, and then what does it mean?
Yeah, that is such an interesting question, and it tugged on the heartstrings a little bit, because I actually had this a similar conversation this last Sunday with someone who, coincidentally, I was telling them that is a major, major flaw of mine that I'm trying to work on. I have grown up as a super rigid, closed off, hard-headed, unemotional individual my entire life. Only guy in my family, me, my mom, my sisters, dad somewhere else. And that mixed with some unfortunate events in my family in terms of, grandparents passing away, this, that. I felt like I had to be the man of the house. And so I started to develop this mindset that I couldn't show emotion ever. someone died, I was the only person in the room not crying. Of course I felt it, you know, I'm human, but I would never show it. And of course most men, I shouldn't say most men, but it's, you know, it's common knowledge that a lot of men do not show it to begin with, but I felt like I really took that to an extreme. And so that is a element of my character I'm really trying to develop now. And, you know, I have been trying to do that with my friends, my family, my girlfriend, and it's not easy, but first step is being aware of it, and secondly is actually executing on it and recognizing the opportunities to actually be in a vulnerable state, allowing yourself to actually show emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I guess reflecting and dissecting on how it felt. You know, was there some benefit to actually showing some vulnerability? So that was a very deep, interesting question.
I got it from our good friend Paige Boner. She runs a podcast called the It's Hard Podcast,
Okay.
and that's like her crux question that she, ever since she's asked us, I've been obsessed with it, and I've tried to understand like what is really this whole thing called vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
But I would applaud you right away by like starting a podcast. That's vulnerable. You're putting your own voice out there over and over and over again for the intent to people to be able to listen to and inspire. I mean, podcast is a form of art. You started a company 6 months ago with these stainless steel water bottles, and also a strong founder and sponsor of this podcast.
That's exactly right.
But that's vulnerable as well, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're really putting hard-earned money and investing into something that you truly believe in, and then not only that, but you're using it to give back to the greater community. Also very vulnerable. So don't sell yourself short with not being vulnerable or not necessarily knowing it, but you're on the right path, and everybody's always on a path through this vulnerability
Right.
anyways. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the dynamic you just brought up in terms of business risk or vulnerability, that's something that I never have had an issue with. You know, I execute, and I execute with speed, especially when it comes to business. And that I have no issues with. I agree with you that is definitely a form of vulnerability, but it doesn't even register in my mind when that happens. I know for a lot of people, it's like, oh my God, it's this investment, it's that. You know, it's a podcast, people are going to be judging me, or, oh my God, I don't speak perfectly. I say, whatever in between my words, like all that stuff.
you're a good speaker though, by the way.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Likewise. But from the emotional standpoint, absolutely huge challenge for me. It is just hands down one of my biggest challenges. And again, I recognize it, I'm working on it, and I don't think I'll ever become a person who's always I wouldn't be overly vulnerable, but I'm more or less choosing my battles. So, you know, I'll give you like a real life example. And this might be TMI, but whatever, this is my show, so we can talk about whatever we want. So, I used to be married, divorced now, and a big reason that probably attributed to that, I don't know the final reason because she dipped without me knowing, but it was, my best guess was a lack of communication and my inability to show emotion and be vulnerable. Like, I'm man enough to look in the mirror and say that was probably a huge check mark I missed, you know? And so I believe in reflection, I believe in accountability, and I believe in not dwelling, but taking action to progress. And so I recognized that and said, okay, let's do something about that. So when I'm in another relationship, I can work on these things, and vulnerability isn't an issue. And it is hardest for me when I'm with the people I'm closest with and the people I love the most. So again, being vulnerable around my spouse / girlfriend, my family, and then my friends. In a setting where, you know, it's just casual, I have zero fucks of what people think about me. I don't care if I spend $5,000-$10,000 on a business and it fails. Like, that type of vulnerability doesn't bug me at all. It's the other side of the coin, the people that are super close. And for some reason, I've developed this false persona that I have to try and uphold.
Bravado.
This bravado, this machismo that I mentioned earlier. I try and keep up with that. And again, that's a big weakness that I'm trying to fix. So wow, what a question. What a question.
Shit, Deck. Hey, yeah, TJ, you're the man, dude.
Yeah,
You're the man.
I appreciate it.
You're awesome.
Thank you, dude. Likewise, I love you guys.
yeah. It's so cool how like someone can walk into your house as a stranger and leave as a friend. I think that's
Right,
the power of
right,
podcasting and
yeah.
conversation. But one more touching point on
Yeah.
what you just said. Like, thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah,
I
of
know
course.
that's probably not easy.
Hey, that's vulnerability.
Exactly.
Yes, it is.
And I applaud you
It's
for
purest
that.
form.
Exactly.
You mentioned this machismo, this bravado, and I think a lot of men try and chase that very thing. Do you equate that bravado and machismo with happiness, or do you correlate it with something that's maybe something else that then you maybe is assumed happiness behind that? Do you kind of follow what I'm saying? Like, is that bravado TJ at his happiness? Is that a direct correlation there, or is it something else?
I think it's a piece of it. I think for me, having a tremendous amount of discipline and structure throughout my day is what makes me happy. And the only way to execute at the level that I'm trying to execute on, there has to be a level of high self-esteem, confidence, and it's kind of an expression that's either overused or a little cheesy, but a lot of times there are moments in business that you shouldn't be emotional, and this is it's a little bit of tongue twist. I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this. It's really a balance of both. I do think that there is some benefits and some advantages of being hard-headed. That's probably not the best word. I'm really struggling with my words here, guys. But what I'm trying to get at is I wouldn't trade a lot of my...
Being
I'm struggling with this one, but yeah.
You don't want to trade you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I definitely enjoy the way I am. Again, I'm very structured. I write down everything I do. I make sure every second of every day is pretty much accounted for. It's very bop, 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 bop. And in order to do that and make decisions quickly, you have to be able to not necessarily like dwell on emotions, whether it's good or bad. And, you mentioned putting out fires all the time. Like, you have to be able to make decisions quickly and put those fires out. If you are overly emotional and overly vulnerable all the time, you sit in this state of inaction and uncertainty. And so it's I've been on one extreme, which is bad. The other end of that spectrum is the overly emotional, everything gets to you. The other person's always, it's just like a bad place to be on either end of the spectrum. The question is, how can you marry the two and figure out when is it appropriate to, leverage one or the other. I don't know if that makes sense. A lot of rambling here. I'm trying to collect my thoughts, but that's how I would look at it is, I need to be able to do a little bit of both.
I like that. No, I think there's something there for sure.
I resonate with that a lot. I'm like an ultra serious person, and sometimes I look negatively at myself for how serious I can get. And when I'm actually like my most intense and my most serious, more times than not, I'm at my best. But however, there are extremes when I am at my most serious and intense level, and I am just negatively affecting everyone around me. So you hit it on the head. Like it can be your best asset when you know how to use it in the right situations. For instance, structuring your day, getting your weights in, and problem solving. That is your bravado. That is your machismo. But then when you're with the people you love and you care about, you need to take a step back and you need to open yourself up and be like, all right, life is not that serious. I'm next to the people that actually care about me for who I am. And that is, saying that right now makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But it's so fucking hard sometimes just to relax and just take a deep breath and be like, okay, I don't need to prove to the people that I love right now who I am.
Right. Yeah. That's a much better way to articulate what I was trying to say and much shorter. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have gotten there without you as well. So it's a team effort.
Yeah, exactly.
This is something
that
Declan and I have really been talking about a lot lately is these conversations that we're having. They are, and you have structured it the same way, we're just riffing. Like,
Right.
I have no idea what you're about to say. I have no idea what Declan's about
Zero
to say.
agenda, right?
Zero agenda, and we get to create this conversation and try to make sense to it and try to provide value to the listener and hopefully organize it in a fashion where someone can take something away. However, I have no idea what the next 10 seconds are going to be like. I'm anticipating something, but you could take it entirely in left field, and I have to think quick on my feet. And that is I think where I find the most fulfillment in podcasting is having to listen and react and contribute in a valuable way. And when you go on the tangent, if you will, of describing what you just did, I'm trying to listen, trying to relate, and pick the pieces where you were trying to put the puzzle together, where I can then maybe add my value.
Yeah.
So where you think you're off in space, we're listening, the listeners are listening, they're putting pieces together, and you're doing something awesome.
Yeah, so it ultimately, like, we're all trying to, like, arrive at a certain point or a certain thing together.
Right,
exactly.
We have no idea what it is.
Well, there's no idea what it is, but, like, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're on some trail, and then we're switching back and forth and going through this journey together.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it builds, like, camaraderie, ultimately. But I think finishing off kind of what you guys were both saying is, like, your strength can be your biggest weakness, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of balance instituted in the whole thing, and just a little bit of, like, a little dose of gratitude for the uncomfortable portion of it. I was talking about this the other night of, like, the fine line between, like, being complacent and being, like, your own devil's advocate, or like the guy who's, like, whipping yourself on the back to get you to go do something, right? Like, I struggle with that all the time, and I feel like in your situation too, where you're so regimented and you're trying to get everything done every single day, then once you miss that one thing, you feel like you fucked up.
Yeah, you beat yourself
You
up.
beat yourself up over it. You feel like you're complacent, but really, like, let's be real. Like, maybe you do need that extra hour of sleep, or maybe you do. It doesn't matter what it is, what the example is. It just means make the most of your opportunity that you have right in front of you, and be grateful and happy about it. And I think the more you try and push positivity in those voids where it's not necessarily there, you're gonna find reward, and you're gonna ultimately find some balance. You're gonna find something down this unopened box or hole or whatever, because you've never dove into it before, because you never really wanted to. You've kind of felt this really a lot of unsatisfaction just looking at the fucking box. But once you go into it, you realize, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought, and now I can maybe even implement that into my life, you know? So there's this, it's this alternate perspective that you can kind of attack it from to ultimately be just a little better.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Hell yeah, bro.
Well, what do you say? Should we call it?
Dude, let's
You guys
call
have
it.
anything else? Yeah, I don't even know what time it is. But yeah, let's call it. Andrew, Declan, really appreciate you guys being on the show. One last time, just super quick, tell everyone who's watching and listening where they can follow you. Quick little 10-second plug again.
Yeah, at the Back Pocket Podcast. Find us anywhere where you listen to stuff. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok now as well. Definitely want to follow us there.
Smart move.
Yeah, my name's Declan Brown. I'm a comedian at Declan Brown 44. Andrew?
I'm Andrew and Sarah, and I run Facebook ads.
I love it.
And we're two wildly average guys, but hey, thank you so much for having us, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, of course. Super, super glad to have you guys on the show and get to know you guys both. I think we're going to be working together on part 2, part 3, part 4 for many years to come, so I look forward to that. Everyone who's watching and listening, you guys can check me out at TJ Haag, spelled Haag, on Instagram and all social media platforms, as well as the Not So Fucking Ordinary Show. And again, if you guys wouldn't mind stopping by fittogive.org, the show sponsor, that'd be greatly appreciated. Again, portion of proceeds are going to charities. So that's a wrap, folks. Till next time, we're out.